Hello, everyone. So this is the module, the topic of early childhood, and it covers three chapters in our textbook, chapters 7, 8, and 9, broken down into physical growth and development, cognitive growth and development, and then social growth and development. And this series of chapters is going to cover the ages from 3 to 5. So this is what we call early childhood. So this is the period where we are old enough generally to go to preschool, but we're not old enough to go to kindergarten. We call this, early childhood. This is in this period where children typically grow about 3 inches per year, about 4 to 5 pounds per year. So this is some pretty rapid development. Children's appetite is diminished. They only need about 1,400 calories a day, and this is considered an important time for developing taste preferences. So there are some strategies during this period about how to encourage children to learn healthy eating habits. They include like don't fight over food, recognize offer of food, and if a child doesn't like it once, offer it again. That remember that a child's appetite may vary over the course of the day or from day to day. One day they may have a really high, maybe voracious and hungry. Another day, not so much. It's really important. And over here on this one side, we've got a list of tips how to establish healthy eating habits. But I think the first one, the one that's third, I think that should be first. That we need to keep meal times to be pleasant and happy. This is thought to be like if every time a kid comes to the table, it ends up in arguments and fights and unpleasantness. This can create a child has a negative attitude towards food. And as we've talk a lot about in our culture today, we talk about unhealthy relationships with food or eating disorders. So I think it's important to know, like, what can we do as caregivers and as parents of small children to make sure that they have a healthy attitude towards food. Okay, so let me get back to the list, right? Don't force, don't fight over food, be flexible in what you expect them to eat, keep meal times pleasant. Don't no short order cooks, and what this basically means is like don't be willing or you'll make anything they want. That's what I mean by a short order cook, is that they can get food from you on demand. You should limit the choices because as we know about cognitive development and even choice making in adults, that too many choices can make it hard to decide. Make sure children are offered balanced meals and that they are familiar with what a balanced meal looks like and it includes. And then don't bribe. So don't say if you eat your peas, then you can get ice cream, right? Or if you eat this, then you can have that, because then it turns food into a currency instead of what we need to sustain ourselves, right? It can alter the healthy relationship with food. This is also a time of some brain maturation, right? So at this stage, a child's brain is about 75% of an adult's brain. So our brains are growing really fast. What's significant also is the development of our prefrontal cortex. So that's the front of the brain. If you remember that the brain develops from the back to the front, but this is the part of the brain that controls executive functioning and planning ahead. And as there are more neural connections in this part of the brain, then children are able to think more long term into the needs. So your textbook uses an example. They call it the soccer game example. And if you think about a child, and I thought this was a really good example, if you think about a child on a soccer field, they really have to know quite a bit in order to play soccer. They have to understand the rules of the game. They have to understand their role in the game and to think about, okay, the ball is coming towards me, so then what do I do? So they have to think ahead. They have to be able to coordinate their own physical movements, and then they have to be the emotional response to either if they successfully kick it or if they miss it or if somebody bumps them. This is a lot going on in their little brains, and so all of these different structures have to have some level of development in order for them to successfully play soccer. So if you, again, going back to the notion that the brain develops from the back to the front, the back is coordination, the middle is where we have emotions, and then the up front part is the part that kind of regulates how all these other things are going to work out. So the fact that by 3 and 5 we start to get the parts of the brain that are going to regulate our emotional center, so we have improved emotional control and planning. We also have development of some motor skills. I shouldn't have done air quotes. I don't know, that was silly. But motor skills simply means the ability to move. If you think about a motor, makes things move. We have gross motor skills. Those are big. Those are our arms and our legs and our balance. And then the fine motor skills are our hands and when everything that we do small. So given that this textbook is written, it's written actually from the perspective of child development people. Child care center people. It offers some examples as to how you could help a child develop their gross motor skills. So some of the examples are offer them a tricycle or slides, or play Simon Says, where you hold your hands, Simon Says, run across, tunnels, tents, bowling pins. And then fine motor skills, that's where children are learning how to use like their hands to pour things, to cut things, Play-Doh, lacing, these kinds of things. So gross is big, fine is small. We also have, as our bodies are growing very quickly, one of the things that's really important during this time is the need for sleep. I am a big advocate for sleep. In my other psychology classes, I spend a lot of time talking about sleep. We actually you actually can die as quickly from sleep deprivation as you can from food. And sleep is so important that bearing any sort of like torturous experiments, you will fall asleep when you are tired. You cannot resist. It is essential. I think I should have more than one exclamation point. Sleep is essential. You cannot get too much sleep. If you are tired for whatever reason, psychological, emotional, physical, you will sleep. Children in this stage should be sleeping 10 to 11 hours. That's sort of the standard, the standard kind of sleep, or the standard amount of sleep that children this age could get. And obviously, if they're extra busy or if they're sick, they need more. Sleep is implicated in all aspects of their development, in their immune function, in their physical growth, in their brain processing, in their hormonal production, in their mood, in their learning. Sleep is essential. They're also referenced in this textbook are a couple, we might call them parasomnias in my other psychology class. One of them is sleepwalking. I don't know how to say that word, which is pretty normal in the next stage of childhood, middle childhood. Sleepwalking is a fairly common phenomenon. It has to do really with the body is supposed to be paralyzed, but in the body, so there's the different stages of sleep where the brain is the brain is active, but the body is supposed to be paralyzed. So typically sleepwalking happens in the shifts in sleep cycles. I'll talk more about that probably in another chapter. And sleep terrors. If you have small children, you probably have observed a terror, and this is when a child from deep sleep just wakes up screaming and hollering out, and a parent comes running to them, what's going on? Wake up, wake up. And a child wakes up, maybe they wake up, or they lay back down and go right back to sleep. I argue that they're called terrors because they're terrifying to the adults, not necessarily terrifying to the children. But children typically wake up in some sort of terrorized emotional state. And then your book also references a nightmare disorder. This is simply a phenomena of children having frequent chronic nightmares. When we talk about nightmares in Gen Psych class, we usually talk about them as dreams that have an anxiety or a fear component. There's nothing that really defines a nightmare other than that they're frightening, that they have an emotional frightening response. 3 to 5, this is when we're doing we should have been potty trained by now, right? That's right. Keep remember what chapter we're on. Typically, a normal developing child should have been potty trained by 36 months. It happens sooner for girls. There are some sort of your textbook 8 signs for recognizing if your child is interested in potty training. What do they include? That like interest in the potty, complaining when they're wet, some element of bladder control, able to follow instructions. So there's some sort of ways of knowing. What the textbooks tell us is that if a child doesn't act interested, or you try and it doesn't work, that you should stop. That instead of keep trying, you just wait for some more development, wait for them to get a little bit older. And then there's a couple fancy terms here for if a child doesn't have the ability, or is one of them is bedwetting, and I believe the other one has to do with passing stool, pooping their pants. So one of them is wetting their pants and pooping their pants. Okay, it's been 10 minutes, so I'm going to stop here, and when I come back, I'm going to pick up talking about some other elements of child physical development.